Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. The AMD Radeon RX 6400 graphics card has been criticized online by many tech enthusiasts for being a stupid little video card that no self-respecting gamer should consider. Hold that thought, because today, allow me to set the record straight on the little GPU that could. You're currently watching Cyberpunk 2077 running at 1080p, 100% render resolution, high textures, low detail preset. It's not perfect, it won't hold 60 frames per second 100% of the time, however, it's way better than some of the online comments from the peanut gallery might have you believe. I'm rarely surprised when testing hardware. This is one of those times. Don't misunderstand me, this card does have limits, and when you hit them, performance does fall off a cliff. However, if you keep it within reason, this will play more games than you might think. Today, I have 24 game benchmarks to show you, timestamps below if you want to skip around and see specific games. However, I hope you take the time to watch this entire video because it goes into more detail than a benchmark chart on the value of this GPU. Today's video is brought to you by eWin Racing, the best source for gaming chairs and desks for those long gaming sessions. We have a playlist of our eWin chair and desk videos linked in the video description below. Save 30% off of everything using the discount code TechDeals. More details at the end of the video. In November of 2020, AMD launched the RX 6000 series of GPUs featuring RDNA 2 architecture. The $579 RX 6800 was the least expensive card at launch, which is wonderful for high-end buyers, but not everybody wants or needs a premium GPU. Today, we are looking at the other end of the spectrum, the entry-level RX 6400, which starts at just $149, depending upon the model. The specific card we're testing today is the XFX Swift 105. It is a half-height, single-slot card with a very tiny fan and no PCI Express power connector. In terms of performance and cooling, this is probably the worst possible version of this card that you can buy, so expect lower fan speeds and better temps from literally any other card. On the plus side, we're showing you the worst case scenario, so your results will only improve from here. Let me start off with the TLDR on this card. The only reason to buy this is if you absolutely, positively need a graphics card that does not require a PCI Express power cable. This is an RX 6500 XT that has been cut down from 1024 cores to 768 cores. It's had the VRAM speed lowered, and the TDP of the card has been lowered from 100 watts down to 50 watts. If you are okay with having a card that requires a 6-pin PCI Express cable, then you should absolutely buy the RX 6500 XT and not the 6400. The 6500 XT is 20% faster on average than the 6400, and it costs only 12% more money at the time of filming, $168 versus $150 for the 6500 XT and the 6400 respectively. Shopping links to both cards are in the video description below to Amazon, Newegg, and eBay. So if you want to buy either of these cards and you want to support us at the same time, using those links is a great way to do so at no cost to you. The RX 6600 is worth a mention here, and yes, it is a way better card if you can afford it. However, it's 66% more money than the 6500 XT, so I'd hope it's way better. Now, it's beyond the scope of this video, but just keep in mind that if you can afford it, it is totally worth the extra money for the performance and the 8 gigabytes of VRAM that it offers. One final point to consider when looking at the results today. The RX 6400 and the 6500 XT only use 4 PCI Express lanes. However, they do support Gen 4 of PCI Express, so ideally you would install these cards on a PC that uses Gen 4. We are, however, today testing on the i9-10900K installed on a Z490 motherboard, so we have only 4 Gen 3 lanes to work with here. A Gen 4 board will provide slightly improved performance. Coming back around to the RX 6400, this video won't follow my typical format. We're going to jump around to some different games and show you some detail setting comparisons, because honestly, that's the real trick to getting value out of this card. At the start of this video, I showed you Cyberpunk 2077 running at 1080p, 100% render resolution, high textures, but low detail preset. Now this is the same settings, except all detail turned to high. Performance is nearly half. It really falls off a cliff when you push this card beyond its design limits. Now you're watching 1080p, 50% render, high detail, and this is an interesting trade-off because the resolution, the internal render resolution, is much lower, but you get better world detail in exchange. Now let's put two of these side by side. On the left side of the screen, we have 100% render, low detail with high textures, and on the right, we have 50% render with high detail across the board. Most games will have a sweet spot of settings that provides a good balance of visual quality and performance. Don't be afraid to play around with settings to find that balance. Finally, this is Cyberpunk at 1080p, 50% render, low detail with low textures. The performance is now pretty good, but the visual quality is so bad, does it really matter anymore? It's a muddy, blurry mess. You might as well be playing on a PlayStation 2. Here is the chart showing the 4 different runs and their settings, average and 1% low FPS. In my opinion, the low detail, 100% render with high textures was the sweet spot. Built-in benchmarks are nice for comparisons, but is the game really playable on this card? How about we look at that right now? This is live gameplay at 100% render, low detail, and yes, it is completely playable. Now don't get me wrong, this is far from ideal. It doesn't hold 60 frames per second and it isn't butter smooth. However, you could play it this way. In fairness, of all the games today, Cyberpunk 2077 was designed for ultra detail with ray tracing turned on, and if you can afford an RTX 3090, rock on and enjoy the movie. But don't think you can't have fun if you're on the other end of the GPU spectrum. It does work. Some of you are impressed by that, and some of you are saying to yourself, low detail is all well and good, but if it doesn't run at high detail, then it's not really a good solution. Allow me to present The Division 2 live gameplay, 1080p, high detail at 100% render resolution. This was completely controllable throughout the 16-minute mission that I played. It averaged 57 frames per second. It held a 35 1% low. During heavy combat, expect about 45 frames per second, give or take. To be fair, The Division 2 came out in 2018, so it may be a AAA game, but it's a 4-year-old AAA game, which is why it does run as well as it does. I am also playing in an endgame instanced solo area with scripted enemies, so it's an ideal use case for this card. If you get into multiplayer action in the Dark Zone, join up with some friends and have open world battles, you really will need to lower the detail to keep performance acceptable in this situation. Let's move on to something wildly different. This is a game from the vault if there ever was one. Not quite Will It Play Crisis, but pretty much the same thing. This is Star Wars Republic Commando running at 1080p high detail at an absurdly high frame rate. I'm including this here only to make a point. If you play brand new games, you may very well need a brand new GPU. If you enjoy playing older games, then anything basic will do the trick. This game came out in 2005 when the original Xbox was out, so of course it runs perfect on the 6400. Okay, to be fair, 2005 is a long time ago in a computer galaxy far, far away. How about something newer? Grand Theft Auto V is one of the most successful video games of all time. Released for the PC in 2015, what you're seeing here is very smooth gameplay, running over 60 frames per second. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying to yourselves, well, I hope it runs at 60 frames per second. It's a 7-year-old game. Fair point, until you consider this isn't 1080p. This is 4K, and it's running at 100% render resolution. That's right, this card plays AAA games at 4K at 60 frames per second. Crazy times indeed. Okay, it's GTA 5. When this game came out, the NVIDIA 900 series and the AMD 300 series were the latest thing, so of course it runs well. It's just another example of what this little card can do. How about something much more recent? Assassin's Creed Odyssey, perhaps. 1080p, high detail, 100% render, 60 frames per second. Now that's a solid result for a game that really isn't all that easy to run. Yes, it came out in 2018, same as The Division 2, however, still an impressive result. What about the newest Assassin's Creed game, Valhalla? That is where performance falls apart, as I noted at the start of this video. At 1080p high detail, it simply doesn't function. With an average of 31 and a 1% low of 21, performance is terrible. However, change the detail to medium and the story changes quickly. Here you can see 1080p medium detail, and while not ideal, it does run much faster with a better frame time graph to boot. Dropping down to low detail improves it further, but not nearly as much as the move to medium did. Here are all three tests stacked on top of each other. High detail on the top, medium in the middle, low detail on the bottom. To be sure, low detail does run at 60 frames per second, but it's ugly enough that I'm not sure it's worth it. Here is a chart with all three tests showing the final numbers. Short answer, buy the RX 6500 XT instead of the 6400, set it to medium detail, and you should average 60 frames per second with a 1% low in the mid-40s while still having a good-looking game. We did the same three detail tests on Borderlands 3, and this time, the move from high detail on the top to medium detail in the middle didn't make a huge performance difference. The bottom is set to very low detail, and as you can see, this is much faster than medium. 37 frames per second average at high is honestly pretty terrible. 52 at medium is definitely better, but the 37 1% low is marginal at best. 91 to 108 frames a second at very low is a vast improvement. Again, play with the detail settings until you find something you can live with. Far Cry 6 is an example of how you can't take one piece of advice and apply it to all situations. Here is low, medium, and high detail being tested again, but the difference is how small the gap is between the settings. 48 frames per second at high is only 12 lower than medium, which itself is only 13 frames per second slower than low. Every game is different. Some settings will affect performance more than others. Dirt 5 was tested at high and low detail. Again, this is 1080p 100% render. The difference is night and day. 32 frames per second at high to 74 frames per second at low. This is another case where I'd say buy the 6500 XT, set it to medium, and you'd land right around 60 frames per second and probably be quite happy with that result. Finally, that brings us to two different multiplayer shooters, Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Fortnite. First, we're looking at Call of Duty 1080p with a low to medium detail mix designed to find 60 frames per second. In this case, we averaged 57 frames per second and had a 1% low of 31. Now, this is not ideal for competitive play, to be sure. However, it is totally good enough for casual fun. Naturally, don't try it at 1440p high detail, which we also tested just to see what would happen. As you can see here, performance falls off a cliff in a really big hurry with an average of 26 frames per second and a 1% low of 17. Amazingly, it was playable, it just wasn't very good. Fortnite is an interesting game to test, one that could get its own video. You have detail presets, render resolution, ray tracing, and then you have performance mode. This first battle being shown is 1080p, 100% render, high detail. It's pretty good overall, all things considered, but if you're a serious player, these frame rates aren't going to be ideal. 70 frames per second average sounds okay, but for a competitive shooter, it's very average indeed. Moving on to performance mode, we lose a number of the pretty graphical effects in exchange for more than double the performance. We averaged 193 frames per second, nearly triple the performance of high detail. An important detail to note here is that the GPU is not being used 100% of the time here. We are actually CPU bottlenecked for much of this battle. Now be honest, Raise your hands if you thought an i9-10900K at 5 GHz would ever CPU bottleneck an RX 6400. Okay, the two chuckleheads in the back, you can put your hands down. No, you didn't think that when you started this video. Here are 6 games that we tested at 1440p high detail preset, mostly because we test these 6 games on every card at 1440p high detail. Gears 5 actually runs okay, with Shadow of the Tomb Raider not far behind. But honestly, none of these make any sense. They are here for future GPU comparisons, not because I'm recommending this for 1440p. Here is a single chart of 14 games that were tested at 1080p high detail. Now, some of these games run really well. F1 2020 is a good example, reaching 129 frames per second. Then you have games on the low end like Valhalla, which are really, really bad. Most of them fall in the middle ground of functional, if not amazing. Horizon Zero Dawn is a good example at 49 frames per second. It works, you could play it, but again, a 6500 XT would be better here. It would be around 60 frames per second average. Open world games typically suffer the most. Watch Dogs Legion might very well bring 46 frames per second, but you know that's going to dip down into the low 30s, if not high 20s in real gameplay. Looking at the 1% lows for all 14 games, only Far Cry New Dawn really stood out here. Most of these are terrible, all things considered. If you take anything away from this chart, it's that high detail isn't always the right choice. I opened this video by challenging the conventional wisdom that the RX 6400 was a terrible card that no serious gamer would consider.
What? I love garbage.
In general, that's actually a true statement. If you're a serious gamer, you really can do better. Having said that, I honestly want to hear what you all think of these results. Were you surprised by any of them? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do read them and respond to the interesting ones. Insightful comments make it a heart. eWin Racing has a wide selection of chairs to fit all shapes and sizes of gamers, ranging from petite to cuddly. They have something for every type of gamer. Not just sizes, but colors and material options as well, including red, blue, purple, pink, orange, and more, plus cloth and leather choices. We have over half a dozen chair and desk videos in a playlist down in the video description below. We also have a very special offer just for Tech Deals viewers. Save 30% off of everything using discount code TechDeals using our link in the video description. We have used eWin gaming chairs for 3 years in our office, sitting on them for up to 8-hour marathon live streams. They are very comfortable, and we are happy to work with eWin to bring you this special discount and recommend eWin for all of your gaming chair and desk needs. Thank you all so much for watching to the very end of this video. 2 gold stars for all of you still here. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you love it. Remember to subscribe to the channel with the big huge red button directly below. Questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, suggestions. I do read the comment section. Leave a comment down below. Links in the video description. There are shopping links down there to Amazon, Newegg, and eBay. Those are affiliate links which directly support the channel at no extra cost to you. Hit those whenever you want to buy anything at all, be it a 6400, 6500 XT, 6600, 6700 XT, or a jar of peanut butter. It all ultimately helps us at the end and is greatly, greatly appreciated. As always, thank you all so much for watching this video. I will see you next time. And this is not the 6400. It's a little card. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. I'm actually thinking of titling this the little video card, the little GPU that could. I think I can, 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 I think I can. In the video description below will be shopping links to both cards to AMD. You know, the problem is so many tech reviewers only test with ultra detail. I saw one review where they tested this in Cyberpunk at ultra. Well, of course it was terrible. What do you expect? That's like doing an off-road competition between a 4x4 pickup truck and a Corvette, and saying, well, geez, the Corvette's a terrible car because it doesn't drive off-road very well. You think? So set this to a more reasonable setting, and Bob's your uncle. It's actually not that bad.